So, hello and welcome to Prepared Foods Solutions TV. I'm Prepared Foods Chief Editor Bob Garrison, and we're excited about this new platform which lets us showcase the best of everything, from ingredients to innovation. It's here that we can go straight to the source with industry-leading experts. Today, we're exploring the dynamic category of non-dairy beverages, which includes plant-based milks and creamers. And specifically, we'll look at trends driving the category, as well as several technology-related issues, including product stability in coffee, as well as sugar reduction. Joining me today is Antonio Sullo, the Head of Research and Development at Amano Enzyme Europe. Amano is a global enzyme company headquartered in Japan, with application centers across Europe, the United States, and in the Asia Pacific. Antonio has an extensive background in food science with expertise in food colloids. In this role, he leads application development for Amano's enzyme solutions in areas such as plant-based beverages and cheese alternatives. So welcome, Antonio.
Thanks, Bob. It's great to be here. And yes, I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, and to structure our conversation, I wanted to kind of take a look at like a market overview, and then some consumer insights, and then an overview about Amano. And so I wanted to start with like a market overview, and I wanted to ask if you could just share what you've learned about the plant-based dairy market, including like growth drivers and kind of how you see the market overall right now.
Well, I mean, it's been an interesting category to work in, and we've seen it evolve quite quickly over the past decade. So if you think back to 2018, 2020, the category went through a period of rapid expansion. And in many markets, we saw double-digit growth and a lot of innovation happening at the same time. So very exciting. Companies were actually experimenting with different plant-based, different blends, product format, flavor. It was really a time where novelty was key, and but the main point was trying to figure out what consumer would accept and what product could really realistically scale, right? So now the category is starting to mature, and so the focus is shifting towards product that consumers buy regularly, and that fits more naturally into everyday consumption's habit. So beverage, for example, like almond or oat drinks are now widely recognized and used by many consumers. And but at the same time, we are starting to see improvement in other segments like plant-based cheese, where some formats are gradually gaining traction in the market. So looking ahead is a very positive future. Most market forecasts still expect steady growth, typically around 7 to 9% annually through 2030. And I would say the main drivers behind this growth remain broadly the same. So lactose intolerance, sustainability concern, and of course, changing dietary habits. But I would say that the next phase of growth will likely depend more and more on delivering strong nutritional value, improving price competitiveness, and of course, taste and performance needs to be what consumer expect.
Yeah, so as you reference nutritional value in things like sensory experience, let's dive in a little bit deeper into the consumer side of this. So and just talk more about what that consumer, just can you elaborate a little bit more on what the consumer's journey has been, and what have you learned about their attitudes and behaviors?
Yeah, sure. I mean, one thing that became clear quite quickly is that most consumers in this category are actually flexitarian. So they're not necessarily trying to eliminate dairy completely from their diet, but instead they tend to combine plant-based options with traditional dairy, depending, of course, on the situation. So people are usually willing to try plant-based product. So curiosity is definitely there, which I think is a good thing. But repeat purchase only happens if the product really works in everyday situation. And plant-based drinks are a good example. So they've become the main entry point into the category because they're easy to adopt, right? Consumers already use them in familiar contexts, like coffee shops or at home, and so they fit naturally into an existing routine. Cheese alternatives, on the other hand, is a little bit more complex, and that's because the actual product is more complex. Consumers are expecting the same texture and melting profile, stretchability of dairy cheese, and meeting those expectations is still technically challenging in most cases. So at the same time, we see consumers today that are much more informed. So the early perception that plant-based products automatically means healthier is no longer there. People are increasingly reading labels and paying attention to things like protein content, sugar levels, and overall the ingredient list, right? So, and that's really important for consumer before deciding whether they will buy a product again.
Right. Okay. So processors still certainly on both sides, on the beverage side, and even on in regard to the plant-based dairy in regard to cheese, still have some challenges. And that's kind of where Amano comes in. And so can you let's dive into and take a brief look at Amano and what solutions are you guys what solutions is Amano bringing to the dairy category?
Sure. I would group Amano's solution for the plant-based dairy category into two main areas. So the first one focuses on what we could call closing the gap with traditional dairy. And essentially what we're trying to do is to helping plant-based products perform more like dairy in terms of texture, melting, and overall functionality. And that's really because consumers expect these products to behave as the category promises, right? So beverages should work like milk, remaining stable in coffee and as well as foaming in coffee, right? So while cheese alternatives should deliver the right texture, melting behavior, and protein content, similar to dairy cheese. So this is really an area where there is very little room for compromise, and our enzyme solution can play an important role in delivering these properties. And this is without relying on too many added ingredients. The second area is what we call going beyond dairy. And what we mean by that is really to get the most out of plant raw materials and enhance their natural properties. I'll give you a few examples. One is beta glucan in our drinks, so having solution to extract more beta glucan, but also to extract more fibers. So today, a large portion of the fibers from these raw materials often end up as a byproduct during processing. So really the question is, why not try to retain and incorporate more of that directly into the final product? So, and we believe that this type of nutritional improvement will become an increasingly important point of differentiation for plant-based dairy products in the future. So, and one last point is that all of these solutions are developed using non-GM technologies, and that's really aligning with the consumer expectation, particularly for product position as organic.
So thank you for that. I wanted also to dive into some examples, to dive into some applications. And one of the biggest applications involving plant-based milks certainly involves coffee-based drinks and like creamers and foam barista style treatments. And I wanted to ask you kind of what are the challenges from a mono standpoint? What are the challenges here, and where do most plant-based milks fall short? And what are your solutions?
So one area where plant-based drinks can still fall short is performance in coffee. So if you think really coffee is really the ultimate stress test for these products. So when we think about cappuccino or a cafe latte, we all expect, the silky foam or a smooth, stable texture. So if the drink separates, curdles, or fail to foam properly, consumer will notice immediately. And that's because we're all naturally comparing this product with milk. And of course, no one wants to start the day with a bad coffee. But if we think from a technical perspective, the stability and foaming challenges are largely linked to the behavior of plant proteins at the pH of coffee. So coffee typically has a pH that is quite close to the isoelectric point of many plant proteins. And at this point, protein solubility decrease is at its minimum, and therefore proteins tend to aggregate. And this can lead to instability in drinks, and often you can see these small white flocks in your beverages. So achieving good stability and reliable foaming performance in coffee is the key step in the development of what we call now the barista style plant-based drinks.
Yeah, and so how's Amano approach this in terms of providing some solutions?
Yeah, so because the issue is related to protein stability, it made sense for us to approach the coffee curdling challenge at the protein level. So our enzymes is protein glutaminase, PG500, and this enzyme essentially modifies plant proteins so they remain more soluble under the pH condition typically found in coffee. So as a result, the beverage has improved stability and also a significant better foaming performance. And again, this is without the need for additional stabilizer or excessive use of buffering agents. So another important point, which sometimes causes confusion, is that PG500 is not technically a protease. So although it acts on proteins, it does not break them down into smaller peptides that could generate bitter flavors during processing. And because of this, the solution is relatively straightforward to implement at industrial scale, and which is a significant advantage to manufacturers.
Are all plant-based milks the same in regard to foaming? And do Amano solutions perform well in different types of ingredient bases?
Well, the short answer is yes, most plant-based drinks face similar stability challenges when used in coffee. And whether the beverage is based on almond, oat, pea, the proteins, yes, differ structurally, but they tend to behave in a similar way when mixed with coffee. So this is where PG500 offers a clear advantage because the enzyme works through a mechanism that is broadly effective across different plant proteins. So as a result, we see improvements in both curdling stability and foaming performance across a wide range of plant-based beverages.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so let's switch gears and look at another technical challenge. As with all beverages, plant-based milks and liquid applications are often scrutinized now related to sugar and calories. And what have you learned about this aspect of formulating with various plant-based bases? And how do Amana solutions perform with sugar reduction efforts? And can you share a few examples?
Sure. I mean, it is true that consumers are definitely becoming more attentive to total sugar and calorie content. So, and we've seen in response to that many oat drinks manufacturers have launched zero sugar and reduced sugar variants. However, these products are often produced using the same conventional enzymes that are used for standard formulation. So the result, yes, technically meet the zero sugar targets, but the product can still lack in sweetness and mouthfeel. And in many cases, in fact, these beverages end up with a more, I would say, watery mouthfeel. So and that's why at Amano we develop a solution called Veramax G3, which essentially allow manufacturer to better control the sugar profile during processing. And what that means is that for a given total sugar content, our solution generate higher proportion of maltodextrins, and this helps maintaining a pleasant balanced sweetness, and while still meeting the zero sugar targets. Right?
Um, okay, so now we're in a new year, and I'm excited about that. And I wanted to ask, for what you can share with us about where Amano might be going in this category in 2026.
Well, why I can't go into detail about specific products that we are currently developing, I can share some of the areas where we are focusing our R&D efforts, and it's essentially to support the new wave of innovation in the plant-based category. So one important area is plant-based cheese analogs, and we briefly talked about that. But we are working on solutions that improve the natural gelling properties of plant proteins. So, and that's to help manufacturers rely less on starch and other stabilizer, and but still achieving the melting behavior and the stretchability that consumer expect. We also believe that enzyme can play a critical role in combination with fermentation when it comes to plant-based cheese analogs, and also using processes that are quite similar to those used in traditional dairy today. Another key focus area is flavor, and in some markets, the typical beanie notes associated with certain plant proteins are still a barrier to consumer acceptance. So we are therefore developing enzyme solution that can help to reduce these off flavors and improve the overall sensory profile of those products. And from a nutritional perspective, and we briefly mentioned this earlier, we also see an opportunity to enhance the extraction of valuable component such as dietary fiber, for instance. But more broadly, I would say we're working on solutions that help manufacturers make better use of their raw materials and therefore improving the nutritional value of the final product. And finally, something that is not always directly associated with innovation itself, but is about making sure that these solutions work in a real production environment. And developing a successful solution is not only about the enzyme itself, but also how that innovation fit into the industrial process our customers are using.
Thanks for all these insights, Antonio. It's going to be fun throughout the course of this year, including this summer, to kind of continue to see where you're advancing with new developments and your ingredient solutions. That's all the time that we have for today's Solutions TV episode. And I want to say to our viewers to come back soon to Prepared Foods for more podcasts, videos, and the next Solutions TV. Good day.